Click the links, join my channel here over at Subscribe Star, now over at Odyssey. Thanks to everyone over there. So the mainstream media, says Taylor Lorenz at the Washington Post, is collapsing because all they do is lie. And if you can't see that, just means you're so far in an echo chamber you have no idea. So the media is controlled by demons from beyond time and space, the reptilians of Bloomberg, Bezos, Rothschilds, Fink, and all the other institutional investors who have control of the strings. The MSN is dying because they're liars who are pushing a left-wing globalist narrative. There is zero balance in the mainstream. If it's dying, then let it die. So MSN started to have trouble in the late 90s as the technology started to catch up with DSL cable, and then the computers got better, and the websites, the internet were able to handle graphics and short videos, and that was the writing on the wall, was in the late 90s. It allowed people to write articles and produce media on a home computer and get advertising. So now the MSN had to compete with this new model, and it's something that they were not happy with. But the problem with the MSN is that they didn't, and they don't now have the moral high ground because they were always toxic, pushing a globalist, anti-white agenda. It was subtle in the 90s, but it was definitely there. The media has never been fair and impartial. That was always a lie they tried to sell to the cattle. The media is controlled by a small group of demonic lizard people who are going to try to control the narrative at all costs, even if it ends up costing them money, and she's just one of their useful idiots. So, I mean, they didn't have the moral high ground because as soon as people had alternatives to the mainstream left-wing lies, they took it. Think back on all of MSN. They have never had representation for the actual right-wing, far right-wing, which is a segment that also deserves a voice. Because once you say, oh no, we don't want to represent the right wing, well, you have to ask, well, why not? I mean, if you don't have all voices across the spectrum fairly represented, then you're controlling the narrative, and you're not news, you're propaganda. It's like, yeah, the media is obviously propaganda, or the mainstream media is obviously propaganda. The idea to have real right-of-center voices in the media is just abhorrent to them. They wouldn't even consider the idea. I probably can't even name some of these people on Google without triggering the filter, because that's why Google bought YouTube, I don't know, 15 years ago, so that they can help control that narrative. But as Michael Crichton said, life finds a way. So in the 90s, websites started popping up and print market share started dying, and they had to go online and use the same stupid clickbait headlines everyone else had to use. They had to really compete in the open marketplace, and they hated it. MSN started to collapse because they weren't offering a fair, balanced perspective. It was always left-wing, corporate, globalist news narrative, as Elon Musk pointed out, to protect the wealthy and powerful people. You'd be childishly naive to look at mainstream media and think it does anything but that. So when even independent left-wing news, and those were the early, in the mid-90s, those were the early websites that popped up. I think Slate and Salon were some of the early ones. And the thing is, back then, yeah, they had a left-wing bias, but holy cow, they weren't what they are now. It's just insane, Mary Sue level of socialist nonsense. But you could just go to Slate and all these other sites online. There's no need to actually buy a physical newspaper anymore. It was all the same left-wing interpretation one way or the other, and then the right wings, there was like the Jared Taylors, the Dr. Dukes were on there, and I think they had like countercurrents. These were kind of right-wing, politically incorrect, like newsletters that they had to actually physically mail out to have an online space. They were able to, get their own websites set up, and finally people were able to get both ends of the spectrum and decide for themselves, as they should. You should get news from across the aisle. The first thing I do almost every day is I go to the Mary Sue and check what their interpretation of the news is, and then I go to the Daily Stormer and check their interpretation of the news, and it's you're getting both ends of an equally ridiculous, admittedly, spectrum, but at least you're getting a kind of a potpourri of ideas. And when people started, what happened was people started to trust individuals in the media and not a faceless jural entity known as a corporation. some, corporate news company owned by a Larry Fink or Rothschilds or something. If there was that never had to tell the truth, they never had to be accountable, they're always going to be subsidized, or at least they were for a long time. Eventually they run out of money. If there was an MSN that was truly fair and impartial, I think they might have survived. They would piss off both sides. But if you had a network that had both Rachel Maddow and like Dr. Duke, you'd truly have both sides of the spectrum. And that sounds like a great idea to me. I don't have an emotional response to that whatsoever. Have Andrew Anglin and all those kind of types of guys in the mainstream media so they can balance out the Don Lemons or all those other weirdos at CNN and MSNBC. I'm on the right, and I totally support free speech for both sides. But the left wing hears that idea of, wait, you want to have a Steve Saylor news hour? And they lose their freaking mind. They can't even consider the idea of something like that. The left wing has to center because in the open marketplace of ideas, they simply can't compete. Because in an open marketplace, people are slowly going to gravitate towards the right wing. That's why they control the dissemination of information, even if it ends up costing them money. And Disney is a great example of that. Now, decades later, the MSN is having to slim down and cut the fat because of YouTube, Odyssey, and the rest of these competing platforms, which, if CNN, MSNBC could shut down all that stuff, they would do it with a snap of their fingers. You go, wait a minute, the First Amendment, the media, you'd think the media would support free speech. Not so much, because the media is not the media. It's just Pravda. So the MSN cannot compete with TikTok because they can say, well, look how biased these TikTok kids are. Yeah, absolutely, they are totally biased. Now look how biased CNN, Fox, MSNBC are. There's no difference. Why would I watch some ugly lady on ABC push a globalist lie, which is coming from a corporate perspective, when you can go on Odyssey and watch black-pilled counter it with a right-wing nationalist perspective? Well, that's not real news. It's like, well, who gets to decide the truth decides the future. The Washington Post is toxic alt-left media. It's completely worthless. All it tells you is what their agenda is, which is the point. The only point of following the mainstream media at all is to tell you what they want the narrative to be. It doesn't tell you the news. There's not a single nationalist in the mainstream media. Not one. CNN can look at like a Night Nation review on Odyssey. It's a small news channel, and all CNN could say is that they have a bigger budget. CNN has a far left-wing bias, and Stu Peters on Rumble has a right-wing bias. What's the difference? I can look at them and say they're both coming from their own perspective. The left wing is so scared about losing control of the narrative that they got Nina Jankowicz to be the Ministry of Truth. Keep in mind, the government and the MSM have lied so many times over the past 4 years, but if we put up videos showing, say, some famous ones are Biden, Maddow, Fauci, and then, God, who's the other lady? I want to say Zelensky. It wasn't. She was this other lady who was the Department of Health or something. They're coming out. There's so many videos of them saying things that are a material misrepresentation of the truth, aka a lie. And they stated these things as facts, and you're like, well, you didn't have the information before you at the time. Why were you saying that? Oh, well, we lied. And then say, oh, well, you guys lied. Oh, you can't say that. They lied for your own good. Well, we're adults, so we don't need the government and the media to lie for our own good. That's why you rightfully do not trust the government or the media, because they're liars. Glad I didn't trust them. I know most of you didn't trust them either. Hashtag pure blood. So, if we put those videos up, you just get kicked off of YouTube. So alt media popped up, like BitChute, Gab, Telegram, and the rest. The fundamental concept is that nobody is better able to determine the truth of a situation than you, not the government or the media. That's the concept of free speech. You can't trust anyone, so have that open marketplace of ideas and decide for yourself. CNN comes out and says, no, we should control what people think, or Jankowicz or Biden, but you simply ask, well, who will guard the guards? But you ask it in Latin, so you sound smarter. I don't know. Who gets to decide the truth gets to control the narrative, and we and the Founding Fathers did not trust the government or media, which is, you can see examples of why you should not trust the government and media literally every day. We are the check on the media. The media would have had more credibility if they just came out and they showed the voting records of everyone behind the camera, in front of the camera, and pushing the paperwork. Everyone in the media, the owners, and who owns the majority shares. Have a deep dive. Have the media do a deep dive into the media, and you go, oh, That never happens. Of course it doesn't. The media doesn't report on the media because it's not the media, it's Pravda. If they did, it would be 99% far left-wing viewpoints. It's a joke that they expect to be taken seriously. Even as a kid, back in the days of actual newspapers, i.e. physical form paper, I saw that the news gave voting recommendations every year, which was odd. But what was weirder was that it was 100% pushing toxic globalist left-wing ideas and bills and politicians. Almost 100%. Every time it was the media pushing a left-wing viewpoint to go, oh, the media's biased. Where's the evidence? The evidence is the media itself. Here's what they're pushing every year. The idea that they would give recommendations is crazy. And that they would be so bold-faced as to every year give left-wing voting recommendations. You look in the media like, oh, you're all left-wingers. You have a left-wing bias. Oh, no, we're impartial. This is just what the impartial truth suggests. No, that's nonsense. A child would look at this and say, you guys have a problem with the media. They've never even tried to be balanced. They're Bolshevik puppets for puppet masters. But now the money is finally running out. And what's the point of something like the LA Times when it's going to 100% push a left-wing anti-white agenda? The user knows this. They don't need to actually go watch the clickbait ads. The LA, or even pick up a physical paper if indeed they ever sell one anymore. I don't know. The LA Times is the same as BuzzFeed, Slate, Salon, Mike, Now This, Mary Sue, and there's dozens of those kind of sites, which you might think at first blush they're grassroots kind of thing, like some guy and a mic and a camera, like this is grassroots. You know, got some investors and got together and slowly grew his empire. And then when you look behind the scenes, like Mary Sue is a great example. I looked through the business history of Mary Sue, and it's AstroTurf the whole time. It's owned by, started by one publishing company, one institutional investor, VC type, and then sold to another publishing company, and all the girls who write for it. Like, I thought, maybe like this Rachel Leichman started a newsletter, and she grew the thing. I was like, no, it's totally AstroTurf. It's all bullshit right from the start. The thing is, all those media companies, it's all the same globalists who are owning the holding companies in the case of the institutional investors, BlackRock and State Street and those kind of stuff. Let me use myself as an example. People pay on Subscribestar and Odyssey and the rest because people like me offer a counter viewpoint. And obviously there's people, much better than this kind of stuff, but this kind of stuff is so rare, and not for the YouTube stuff. YouTube is absolute cancer. But for the other stuff, BitChute, Odyssey, Subscribestar, that people are willing to send money and support it. And obviously, I love you people. But that's how much people hate the mainstream media. Now you multiply me by thousands. At the top end, you've got the Rumble, Odyssey, YouTube people, even Milquetoast, Tim Pool, and Salty, who to me are obviously controlled ops, but they're still relatively to the far right of CNN. And to their credit, both of those guys have said based things. Salty said something so based, I actually downloaded the video. I was so shocked to hear him say it. He said people, roughly, that people of European descent should start thinking tribally and forming groups. It absolutely floored me. And Tim Pool doesn't say base things, but the people he surrounds himself will. And so I know you're expecting, like, he leads the horse pretty close to water, and he's on YouTube, and he's paid millions of dollars a year. He's just not going to go there because he's in a golden cage. But the people he surrounds himself will occasionally say some pretty honest things. And then there's the people in the comment section who are just, super right wing. The thing is, people are desperate for more balance in the media, and the mainstream media is just absolutely incapable of doing that. When CNN hires Lucas Gage or Dr. Duke or Jared Taylor, Stu Peters, and all those kind of guys, okay, then you might have a fair media. And obviously that's not going to happen. You ask Taylor Lorenz, hey, kid, all those guys, I said a lot of hot words for this video. Could they write for the Washington Post? Could they get article space on the physical newspaper and the website? All those right-wing guys. And they look at you like you're crazy. They're insane. That's just not even on the table. It's not an option. They'll go, well, then you're not fair and impartial, because those are views where there's a percentage of people who want to read both ends of the spectrum. And that, like, the idea is just, you're just speaking a foreign language to them. It's like, but the media is supposed to be fair and balanced and impartial. Again, it's just, they don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys on the next episode.